There are conspiracy theories, and then there are scandals. And then there are stories so uncomfortable that even the most dedicated conspiracy theorists take a step back and say, yeah, this one's real. Tonight, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Not because it's entertaining, and not because it's sensational. We're talking about it because despite arrests, court documents, flight logs, and settlements, this story remains profoundly unfinished. And that fact alone should make everyone uncomfortable. Epstein wasn't famous for inventing something revolutionary. He wasn't a celebrated artist or a public figure with great achievements. He was famous for who he knew and for just how powerful those people were. We're talking about politicians, billionaires, celebrities, royalty, and world-renowned scientists. Before we go any further, it needs to be said loud and clear. This story involves real victims and real devastating harm. Any humor you might hear in this video is not aimed at them. It's aimed upwards at the systems, the institutions, and the powerful individuals who somehow, against all odds, continue to avoid accountability. Because Jeffrey Epstein didn't operate in secrecy. He operated in plain sight for decades. So, who was Jeffrey Epstein? Officially, he described himself as a financier. Which is strange, because to this day, nobody can clearly explain what he financed, who paid him, or why some of the wealthiest people in the world trusted him with their money. His story starts with him as a high school math teacher. Then, somehow, within just a few years, he was managing the fortunes of billionaires. He had no public hedge fund, no transparent client list, and no clear business model. Yet, he owned a Manhattan mansion larger than the White House, multiple private jets, and properties scattered across the United States, Europe, and the Caribbean, including his own private island. That isn't a career path. That's the setup for a mystery novel. The truth is, what Epstein truly possessed wasn't just money. It was access. And in the circles he moved in, access is worth far more than money. This brings us to his private island, Little St. James. On paper, it sounded like paradise. Palm trees, pristine beaches, and absolute luxury. In reality, it became infamous. Victims described being flown to the island, often as minors, where they were abused or trafficked to his powerful guests. Staff on the island spoke of strict rules, Constantos Sabe Ivans, and areas they were strictly forbidden from entering. The island wasn't some hidden fortress. Planes arrived regularly. Boats docked openly. Powerful visitors came and went, right out in the open. Now, legally speaking, just being on that island doesn't automatically mean someone committed a crime. But socially speaking, if the host of every party you attend is later arrested for trafficking minors, some unavoidable questions need to be asked. People often ask about the list or the files. The reality is, there is no single document that neatly lists all the guilty parties. What we have instead is a messy collection of sworn testimonies, 시비르대 positions of pilot flight logs, personal contact books, emails, and sealed settlement agreements. Some names appear as business associates, others as casual acquaintances. And some are mentioned directly by victims as witnesses, enablers, or active participants in the abuse. This is where the public's frustration really starts to boil over. The evidence is complicated, the legal language is deliberately careful, and accountability moves at a glacial pace. If it moves at all. The result is a system where public outrage flares up for a moment, then fades away, while armies of lawyers go to work quietly behind closed doors, making it all disappear. This pattern became painfully clear back in 2008. Epstein was charged in Florida, and what followed was a plea deal so ridiculously generous that it still shocks legal experts today. He served a very limited amount of jail time, was allowed to leave custody for most of the day for work, and most crucially, the deal granted immunity from federal prosecution to his unnamed co-conspirators. It wasn't justice. It was containment. Years later, even the prosecutors involved admitted that the deal should never have happened. That isn't a simple mistake. That's a catastrophic institutional failure. Then, in 2019, Epstein was arrested again. This time on federal charges in New York. The world watched, believing that this time there would be no sweetheart deal. This time there would be accountability. But weeks later, he was found dead in his cell. Weeks later, but the circumstances surrounding his death were bizarre. We're talking about malfunctioning security cameras, guards who had reportedly fallen asleep, his cellmate being mysteriously removed, and a suicide watch that had been lifted just days prior. Now, suicides in custody do happen. But this one raised so many red flags that even people who normally dismiss conspiracy theories had to pause and wonder what was going on. The grand wave of arrests that many expected never materialized. There were no sweeping revelations from a high-profile trial. There was just silence. So, why does this story refuse to go away? People often wonder why, years later, we are still talking about Jeffrey Epstein. The answer is incredibly simple. Stories only end when accountability begins. And in this case, it never truly did. Epstein wasn't some unique, one-off monster. He was a stress test for our entire justice system, and the system failed spectacularly. The most disturbing possibility here isn't that there's some secret, shadowy cabal running the world from an underground lair. It's something far more mundane and, in a way, far more terrifying. It's the possibility that a network of powerful people simply protected their own interests, quietly, legally, and with devastating effectiveness. No dramatic villains, no secret handshakes. Just paperwork, non-disclosure agreements, and a wall of silence. And that, right there, may be the darkest part of this entire story. Thank you for watching. If you found this important, please share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that matter.